Roll for Crit is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Come roll with us at patreon.com/rollforcrit. Today on Roll for Crit, we're previewing a new game called Dungeon Date that's going to be on Kickstarter. If you are familiar with fantasy combat games and you like going into dungeons, killing monsters, and finding loot, that's something you can do in this game too, but you can also befriend those monsters or even take them on a date. Players are going to be gathering up gear, meeting new monsters, and dealing with them in their own way in order to gain the most renown.
Each round will consist of the players secretly choosing one of these cards to put into play simultaneously. For now, let's focus on the ones with the letters. These will decide what dungeon you want to interact with. Once you have played your card and everyone reveals, you will go in the order on the board up there. So you will interact with people, go with A dungeon, B dungeon, so on and so forth, until everyone is done. Now, what happens in these dungeons is you get to interact with the monsters there. There are 3 different outcomes here. One is to romance them. Second, you can just befriend them, keep them in the friend zone. And finally, just take them out and slay them. Now, in order to do any of these, you need to match the symbols there with what your equipment has. So right now, for example, if I wanted to romance a creature, I can only romance the kobold since that matches a symbol on the sword. Likewise, I could befriend the wood gnome there because I match the sort of axe icon. And finally, if I wanted to take someone out, that zombie is perfect for my sword. Now, depending on which action you do, you're going to take the card and put it in the appropriate pile. As you can see on your little player board, you got a romance, a friendship, and a dead pile. Now, romancing a card, they have a little symbol next to their hearts. Pretty much they either like to see you befriend other creatures or kill other creatures. If you successfully do so, you have taken them on a date. Congratulations. You will gain a date point, which will give you more renown, aka victory points, at the end of the game. If you befriend a creature, you can put it, you guessed it, in your friend pile. Now, when you get that, you're going to put a token on them that has a little smiley face. And the next time you interact with another monster, let's say you're missing a symbol for some reason, you can turn that token over to use one of the symbols that appear on your friend. They sort of wingman you and help you out, or help you kill, depends what you're trying to do. Death pile is very simple. They just go in your pile of dead monsters that you have killed. If you were to befriend or date a new monster, it covers up the previous one, and that's the one that matters. So if you take the sprite and were to romance it, you're now worrying about its conditions. If you were to befriend it, it's now going to provide its symbols, and it will reset your friendship status again. Now, you will only get one monster, unlike how we've used all of them here to explain the game. And whichever dungeon you went to, so let's say we went to A because we have that card poking out a little bit, you get the equipment there as well. So you can either equip it right away if it's empty, or put it in your bag for later.
If for whatever reason you decide not to visit one of those dungeons on your turn, you can play one of these other 2 cards that are available to you, Backstab and Stylomancer. The Stylomancer action allows you to visit the Stylomancer, and you have 2 options when you go there. First, you can draw 2 treasure cards, either from the top of the deck or from the discard pile, if there are any in there. And when you take your 2, you then have to discard another one. Could be one of the 2 you drew, or it could be one from earlier that for whatever reason you've decided you don't want. And you can equip those right away or put them into your backpack, whatever you want. It's a way to get extra treasure. Or, once you're there, you can claim a style. Styles are very important. You start with 2 style cards face up, and if you claim a style, then you also get to draw a 3rd one and choose one of those 3 to be your own personal style. This is a way to get renown or points at the end of the game, because you're going to get a renown point for each symbol you have on your gear matching the styles that you have personally, as well as the 2 that are available for the entire rest of the game table. But these only count for gear that you have actively equipped, so that's why it's important to decide what you want to have equipped versus what you want in your backpack. If you go to the Stylomancer, you're also going to get the chance to enchant some of your items. So for example, if you have 2 of the same type, normally you can only have 1 card in that slot. But when you enchant, you get to add one to another. So you could have a reaping serrated sawtooth saber, or you could have a serrated reaping bone scythe. You only get the top symbol showing on the card, so depending on what you're going for with styles or maybe which monsters you're trying to get, that may change your mind as to how you arrange those exactly. Visiting the Stylomancer also allows you to become the party leader. That basically means that you break ties should they arise. Most often they're going to arise when players are fighting. That is what will happen if you take the backstab action. By backstabbing, you will choose another player and you get to attempt to steal one of the top cards of any of their 3 piles. In order to do that, you have to beat their fight value. You notice these little sword and shield symbols on all the cards. They actually do mean something. Whatever you played, that's your fight value, and you have to beat the fight value of whatever they played. However, it's not just based on the cards from that turn. Whatever you played on your previous turn is also going to add to it. So normally, let's say you decided to go to the A dungeon on your first turn, that will now be over here next to your board, and whatever you play next time is going to add that in to make up your total fight value. This also means that the card you played last time you can't play again until your next turn once you've played something else, and you will swap those out. If you successfully backstab, you steal one of their cards and you can put it to any of your 3 piles that you like, and now it's yours for points or what have you at the end of the game. The other reason that you're going to be fighting is if 2 players pick the same option at the same time. So if 2 players both played A because you're playing these simultaneously and you don't know what everyone is picking, then you need to fight. Whoever wins that fight gets to carry out the action of the card that they played. Whoever loses a fight doesn't, but they will get a spite card. This is going to add to their fight value for a future fight, but if they lose another fight, they're going to flip it and it becomes more spite. So they're really likely to win. They're going to be very scary in the future. If they successfully win a fight, then they lose the spite card and go back to normal. The monsters in these piles are going to get progressively more difficult as you continue going through them. As soon as one of these piles runs out, players will go through one final round, and then the game is over. You're going to count up points from all of your cards based on how many sets of either the same color monster you have in a pile or monsters of a different color in a pile. There are different numbers that you'll need for different combinations. You also get points again for your matching symbols on your gear to the styles that are currently in play, and also a point for each date that you have.
Some say it may be wrong to pick up a monster in a dungeon, but with all these renown points, I'd say at least it's pretty good.
It's a good place to be. I think it's a romantic locale.
The lighting is just that nice dim light. The skeleton band, of course, the beautiful music.
Yeah, or you can just try to be friends with all the monsters, or just kill them. It is kind of up to you. Now, we can go a little bit more into depth into how the scoring works in this game, because I think that might help people understand kind of the strategies behind it. You're trying to get either different monster types, which is the background color of them, or sets of the same type, and they only count for each pile that they're in. So maybe if you romanced one orange monster, you might then be looking for more orange monsters, or you might say, now I'm going to try to get 3 other colors to make that matching set to get points that way. And of course, that depends on what comes up and what other players are doing. But in that way, I think you're probably going to end up kind of specializing somewhere in between in the different piles. But if you do have monsters left over that don't fit into a set, they're still going to be worth 1 point. But that's kind of the way you're going to be thinking in this game, is which colors are better for me and how.
That's where that backstab comes in for if your friend decided, like, I'm going to befriend that orange monster, and you're like, but I'm in love with orange monsters. Well, stab your friend in the back and get your new date.
Yeah, yeah. So that's how it can be done, and that's where that fighting thing comes in, which is really this game's element of take that a little bit. And I think the spite mechanic, where you get a spite card, does a good job of ensuring that every turn isn't just going to be, I fight you, you fight me, I backstab you, you backstab me. It doesn't feel terrible to lose a card, or if someone goes for your preferred space and they win the fight. Odds are good that means that your next fight, you're probably going to win. So people are going to be looking out for you. So I think there's a decent back and forth in that way if you're someone who is afraid of that kind of aggression in a game like this.
Well, because those monsters are in the different piles too, it's really also going to be like, is it worth it? Like, yes, I stole that card from you because, I'm collecting that specific color, but I could try to steal from you, but I'm really trying to go for a variety here. And there's another orange I could take. And I feel like that's where things are going to go up. And especially because I don't think Backstab can take from the dead pile, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
So that's a good way to be like, well, I'm going to put it in the dead pile so it's there, But the other thing we haven't touched much is the equipment, because it's not simply just a resource for you to date monsters, which of course, looking fabulous is definitely going to catch the monster's eye, but it's going to earn you renown at the end. And trying to plan out how your gear works there is going to help out a lot, because not only will there be the public styles, but you're going to be able to get your own personal style. So that's a good way to make sure I'm the only one who scores the arrowhead symbol or something like that, which then might deter other people from picking up that gear, meaning you can have more of it.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because at the start, you have those 2 public styles, and you might start building towards them, or you might not want to do that because maybe odds are good someone else will take one of those styles and you'll no longer have access to it. So, or at least you won't get points from it, I mean. So maybe you want to try to plan for something else entirely and just hope you draw it when you go to the Stylomancer. It's definitely a lighter game, but there are little things that you can try to figure out and plan for that give it a bit of depth. And you saw some of the monsters that we had laid out. They have other ones in each game. You are going to randomly lay out some of those of different difficulties. So you never know exactly which colors are going to show up and in what number. So you can't predict, oh, I saw 2 oranges, so I know there's 2 left. So that does keep you on your toes a little bit and means you're going to need to probably have some backup plans in case what you're looking for doesn't show up.
And I think the one thing we can safely say, though, is that every player here is a bard, because that's what bards do.
Yeah. It's got a lot of cute art style across the board. Very, very colorful, very friendly, I think, welcoming. If you like fantasy style games, but you want something that has a little bit more of a tongue-in-cheek flavor to it, this one goes for 2 to 4 players. And I think it fits that kind of light filler style, but without too much take that, and with enough depth to it that there's something to think about. It's called Dungeon Date, and once it's on Kickstarter, you're going to find a link to it in our description right down below, so you can look at all the details in full, see more monsters and everything, and decide for yourself if you want to back it.
Well, until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been a Roll for Crit preview.
We would love it if you liked and subscribed to this channel and supported us on Patreon as well.
For legal reasons, we've got to disclose we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with more awesome content.